Hello everyone and welcome to this entry of Project Glastron. In this video I'm going to show you what I've done since I got the boat back from paint and here at home in my garage. Hello everyone, so let's just jump on into what I've done on the boat since getting it back from paint. As many of you maybe have seen, the last video I was hauling the boat home, getting it here in the garage. Now, one thing to note was that when I brought it back, I didn't have the rub rail on the boat. I never took those rails up there to the paint shop. I knew that was something that I wanted to do to them first before reinstalling them, and then I wanted to be the one to reinstall them. Specifically what I'm talking about is I needed to sand and polish the rails. The reason I needed to do this was because, 40 plus years of use, this boat had lots of dings, scratches, kind of some pitting areas from where, maybe it had hit some rocks or something like that. It kind of had some jagged spots in the rail. I needed to get rid of those before putting them back on the boat so that I would be happy. Now, I have never in my life polished aluminum. It's an art form. I know that it's possible, but it's something I've never done. Just wasn't in my wheelhouse, but now it is because I did a little bit of research and figured out the best method to polish these rub rails for the boat. Specifically, I did a few test patterns on one of the rub rails before turning myself loose on the whole thing. The first go around of testing, I did an 800 grit, 1000 grit, 2000 grit, and then some polishing compound at the end to get it to shine. Now, the things I learned on the first go around, which by the way I also did wet sanding, and I used kind of a lukewarm to warm water in a bucket with a little bit of dish soap in there. This kind of helped keep the sandpaper from just kind of clogging up with metal. And as you can see here in my video, it did pretty well, but I noticed something else when doing this besides how much elbow grease it was going to take. I also noticed that I didn't really get rid of all of these scratches. This is because I didn't sand with a coarse enough grit. By starting with 800 grit, I didn't eat down far enough on the surface of the aluminum to get below some of these bigger scratches. So when you get to polishing, it just kind of really magnified them, and it kind of left more visible lines than what it was before. Because before, I'm starting with something that wasn't polished. It was just kind of more of a brushed aluminum without a shiny surface. So that was stage one. Stage two was, okay, we got to get some coarser grit, start with the lower grit, work our way up to the 1000 grits. And the other part of that was I had been researching and found that some people use WD-40 instead of water. The WD-40 method, on some of the videos I watched and some of the research I was doing by reading and whatnot, makes sense to see it on other applications, but for the surface area of these rails, it just wasn't something I was going to continue to do. The thing I found with WD-40 is the sandpaper clogged up a lot more. I mean, I couldn't get very far in my test pattern with one sheet like I could if I was just using soapy water. The WD-40 made the metal particles just really stick to the sandpaper, so that's kind of my takeaway from that. It probably works fine, but for my application and what I was doing, it just wasn't going to allow me to get very far without burning through lots of sandpaper, so I knew that was out. Second thing that I learned was that by taking it down to a lower grit, which I think I actually, the second time around I got down to 180 grit. So I got down to 180, then the next one was 220, then the next one after that was 320, 400, 800, 1000, 1500, 2000, 3000, then polishing compound. Worked great. The only negative from it was the WD-40. I just knew I wasn't going to do that before turning myself loose on the rest of the rail. But it did really well. Got the rails to polish and shine. Was able to get below some of those scratches that I was talking about on the first test. So this was the great method to go for. I just knew I was gonna go back to the soapy water. The other thing I learned was it's gonna take a lot of elbow grease, and these are some pretty big areas of metal to be polishing. So I really wanted to speed up some of the process. So even though I was kind of nervous about it, I did a test by getting some 6-inch sticky pads for my DA sander, and starting with a 180 grit, working my way up just on, like I said a minute ago, through all those grits. I could only get DA sander pads locally in 180, 220, and 320, I believe. And then after that, it was just regular old do it by hand sandpaper. I couldn't find anything else locally to fit my DA sander. I could have ordered some, but I was trying to buy local, and in case I ran out, I really didn't want to buy a bulk and have just tons of sandpaper. So that was the reasoning there. But anyway, DA sander did great. Allowed me to get below the scratches easier than doing it by hand. Now, with the DA sander, I didn't wet sand. I just did a dry sand, and it's perfectly normal. But once I got up to 400 grit, I did it by hand, and 400 grit, 800 grit, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, 3,000, and that was the method to get the sanding done. Now, I had hours on each side of the rub rail. So if you look at a rub rail, you got a top and a bottom half, depending on which way you're looking at it, or you've got side A, side B. So that, I kid you not, I probably had 4 to 5 hours per side in sanding. And that includes doing the 3 grits with DA sanding and then the rest of the grits by hand. Just ate up a lot of time. Now there's probably people out there, you may be somebody yourself watch the video who could do it quicker. More power to y'all. Man, I mean, this is something that just, I could not get through it quicker than what I was doing. It just seems like, I don't know if I just had so many scratches that it just took me forever to really get it to where it looks right. I mean, because I had gotten to, after doing these tests, I could tell if I had eaten down past the scratches or not, because you're kind of getting a really uniform surface, and you can just see it, like you're just really etching it down. And it took forever to etch down the metal to the level that I needed it to. But once you do that one, the 180 grit, and you step up each grit, it got a little quicker, a little quicker, a little quicker, a little quicker. Now, once I got through all the sanding, it was time to polish the rails. Now, as you heard me say earlier, I got up to 3,000 grit sandpaper, and that last round of sandpaper with the 3,000 grit, that was more of a polishing compound slash sandpaper. I used this 3M polishing pad, but it is, I mean, it's got a little bit, you can see little specks of like sandpaper in it, but it's also got rubbing compound in it, or polishing compound. So once I finish with the 3,000 grit, it's time to actually do the polishing. Now the polishing, I use this Mother's mag and aluminum polish. You can get this at your auto parts store. This was actually at my local AutoZone. That's where I picked this up. And I used a buffing pad for my drill. I just bought a set at Harbor Freight to demonstrate kind of how I do a polishing of the rail. I thought I would show you from start to finish me working on the nose piece of the rub rail. So again, here I am polishing the rail, and I'm gonna speed this up just a bit. But as I told you earlier, you start with the roughest grit, which is 180. Once I got that all nice and down to what I call a rough surface, it was time to go up a grit. So then you go up to your 220. And then again, you're just going over every inch again, making sure you've got a nice uniform surface. Then you jump up to 320. Same thing with a DA sander on the 3rd stage. Then once you're done with 320, it's time to go to hand and do 400 with wet sanding. And then once 400 is done, it was on to 800. Knocked out the 800 pretty quick on this small part, then jumped up to 1,000, and then we jumped up to 2,000. And again, here's that 3,000 polishing pad here, which really starts bringing out that mirror finish. And then you hit that dude with the Mother's mag and aluminum polish, and it really brings out the shine. And now this piece is ready to go on the boat. But before I could get the nose piece on the boat, I had to put these rails on the boat. So one thing I decided to do, just to kind of, keep water in mind as water repellent, I put a bead of silicone on the bottom lip of the rail. So on the inside of the bottom lip, which there's a bottom lip that goes up against the cap. So you've got a cap here, and you got a rail that goes up underneath it. And then there's gasket material, basically. Not really gasket as far as, it's more of a foam barrier that's along on the inside of the cap. So this goes underneath that, and I put a bead of silicone between those two surfaces to kind of keep water out best I could. So put that bead of silicone on, lift it up, and then I started doing stainless steel oval head fasteners to get a nice, good bond to the boat. And you know what? This was the final piece of strengthening the cap. The boat now is like so rock solid with this rail just going on here on the beginning stages that you're seeing. I mean, talk about taking out any vibration. It really just amazed me, because I had been without a cap on this boat for so long when the last time I actually had it here in the shop, and then briefly got the cap on it, then sent out the paint. So I really hadn't had much of a chance on really kind of just taking in how much structurally sound this boat was from after tearing it all the way down and building it back up. But on doing the cap here, I've actually got a couple of the bags left. I went to Fastenal and I got some stainless steel screws. Now these are oval head, because oval head was a majority of what I took out of this boat. And I did a combination of 1 inch and 1.5 inch. The 1.5 inch I used mainly around the nose of the boat because I found that it needed to really kind of bite that down and really sandwich those cap together. It had, just for some reason, I needed a little bit longer screws in the front of the boat, which is fine. And I ended up using those just kind of, from there on out, I just kind of alternated. I did 1 inch and 1.5 inch screws just to kind of really, bring the surfaces together and make sure I had a really nice tight fit of the cap and actual hull, because this was the last time I was going to be doing anything. And I tell you what, just kind of busted at that for just maybe a day and had that done. And then the final piece here of rub rail was putting on the actual vinyl rail insert. Now this was fun to find the source, because I didn't use my original that I took off the boat. I ordered a new one. And as you can see here, I changed the color, kind of flipped the script on this thing. I really was liking the bright white gel coat that came back on my boat. So I got an Arctic white rub rail. Now Taco Marine is the manufacturer of this rail, and I'll put on screen here more details about what the size was and the model number for my boat. It's a little bit fatter of a rub rail than what was on here originally. Now I ordered 2 samples to test out on my boat, and as you can see here, the black test sample was the same size as the white one that I bought, and then the white sample that they sent me was the smaller insert out of the 2 samples. And I liked the size of the white one that they had sent, but it really didn't fit well. It wasn't a true side-by-side replacement to the original. The original had a little bit better grooves on it for this particular rail. But the bigger out of the 2 samples fit way better. It's a nice, solid fit. It's just thicker material, so it shows you less of that metal that I just spent all that time polishing. But in the end of the day, I really liked how solid it made the boat feel, and I really am digging this white combination here versus the factory black. By the way, I'll put in the description below where I ordered it from. But once I got it around the whole perimeter, cut it off, I still have tons of this left over. So if something awful happens to this rail, I'll take it off, and I'll put another one on because I've got it in excess now. Got it on supply. Once this was done, I cut off and then moved to the front of the boat and reinstalled the nose piece. Now I drilled the hole out with a drill bit first and then used one of my new stainless steel screws to hold it all down. So it feels really good now to have this rub rail on the boat back here. And I tell you guys, I have been working on something every day since having this boat back. There's lots of stuff to do. There's lots of things I've been recording, lots of things you're gonna see coming up after this video of progress. We're really moving now. And so once I get a few things done with the boat here in the days to come, we'll be looking at, you know, motor, because the motor is last step for me. Get the motor fixed up and putting it on the boat. Not quite there yet, but it's getting closer every day. And one other thing I want to talk about in this video is the Make Old Boats Great Again t-shirt. This is a t-shirt of my own design. One day I just had the idea, wouldn't it be cool to have like a boat shirt of some kind, because, you know, all you guys out there who are talking about your boats, you know, you start commenting back and forth with me and sharing pictures. That'd be kind of cool to have something we could all kind of wear, you know, something we could share. And this is it. So I've got them for sale right now. I'm using Teespring as the vendor. They actually print all the shirts, do all the ordering through their site and payments through their site, and they actually ship it. All I do is just design it and upload it, and then they do all the rest of the work. If you were to buy a shirt and you take a picture, you can go over to my website, jmink.info, to see the shirts, see links to my Facebook page, and there on my Facebook page or through the website, either one, share a picture with me. And if you get a shirt, wearing it, and I'll try to give you a shout out. But that's just kind of something I wanted to do. I wanted to kind of, you know, another way to engage with you guys. I really like t-shirts. I'm a t-shirt collector. I thought, hey, that's something I've been wanting to do for a while, and I finally got one out and ready to go. So, I think I've covered enough in this video. I'm going to try to end it here and wrap up, and you'll be seeing me again soon with way more cool progress on the Glastron. For all you who've been following me for forever, it seems like, thanks for hanging in there and following me up this long and this far with progress. I really appreciate it. And for all you new subscribers out there, thanks for stopping by, thanks for following me, thanks for giving me thumbs ups and comments and positive feedback. I really appreciate it. And if some of you out there watching right now aren't subscribers, please consider subscribing so that I can see you next time.